What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, today we are going to take a look and we are going to talk about the Lions game on Sunday, the absolute blowout, despicable, horrible thing that happened to the Detroit Lions on Sunday afternoon. That, of course, being the 29-0 embarrassment of the Detroit Lions by the New England Patriots. And, today I just quite honestly didn't feel like taking all my stuff over to where I go usually record. Didn't truly feel like editing today. So I'm just going to, come on the live stream, talk for an hour or two, just kind of get all my natural thoughts out there, kind of get your guys' thoughts and opinions on what is going on with the Lions, what can maybe be fixed, what can maybe be looked at as some positives, things like that. So, with that being said, let's get right on into taking a look at this game. And as I said, this game was pretty bad, I will say so. Now, the Detroit Lions, of course, lost this game by a score of 29-0. The defense, I did think the only real positive from the game, the defense did look better, as they should, right? There was no excuse for them to really be bad this week. But you're right, first quarter, you give up 3 points, you give up a field goal because the offense gave the New England Patriots possession pretty much within your field position by the time the defense hit the field. They held them to 3, pretty much the best case scenario there. I thought they played a very good first quarter, right? They held them again to 2 field goals in the second quarter, that touchdown coming from the fumble 6 given away by Jared Goff. They did give up a touchdown in the third quarter, but again held them to a field goal with very limited talent remaining on the field, right? Okuda was out at this point. Ifeatu was out at this point. You had, your starting cornerbacks were Bobby Price, Chase Lucas, and Mike Hughes. Your starting safeties were, I don't think Deshaun Elliott was in the game. I don't even quite truly remember. I think it was Juju Hughes and Kirby Joseph were the safeties with, like I said, Bobby Price, Mike Hughes, and Chase Lucas on your cornerbacks. It was backups. It was not good football players in that allowed the touchdown. But the defense, for their credit, held New England to 5 field goals in a single touchdown with zero help. And I mean zero help from the opposing or from their own offense, right? The offense could not sustain drives. They could not score points. They got into the red zone 5 separate times and were unable to score a single point. Now, obviously, some of that likely coming with the aggressiveness, right? They could have kicked 5 field goals, and this could have been a 29-15 game, which would look a little bit better, and I think would have people looking a little bit less drastic and extremely at how poor this performance was by the Detroit Lions. But at the end of the day, it was bad. It was really bad by the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff did not look comfortable at all in this game, right? Jared Goff, 19 of 35 passing, 229 yards, 0 touchdowns to 1 interception, sacked twice on the day. Probably the worst statistical game by the offensive line all season, and certainly the worst statistical game by Jared Goff this season. This was a game that looked like last year. This was a game that looked like how the Lions played Philadelphia last year. It was bad. It was ugly. There was no real big plays. There was no touchdowns. There was no fireworks. For the league's number 1 scoring offense going into this week, they could not do anything inside the red zone. Jamal Williams had 15 carries for 56 yards. Nothing incredible, but not a poor day either on the ground. Craig Reynolds had 6 carries for 24 yards, but I think he was a little bit more effective in the screen game on top of what he did rushing-wise. Justin Jackson had 3 carries for 14 yards, didn't really do anything that incredible. And then Jared Goff did run for a few yards here and there, right? Didn't really have any big runs with his legs, which you wouldn't expect him to. Josh Reynolds led the team with 6 receptions for 92 yards. The Reynolds duo had the big receiving days, as Craig Reynolds had 3 receptions for 68 yards, including a really well drawn up screen that I really hope they go back to Not a whole lot of great offensive things to talk about in this game, but I did think that screen pass to Craig Reynolds was a concept that the Lions should return to. I really liked the misdirection. I liked the pass back, and obviously it worked for a huge chunk of yardage. Fortunately, the Lions weren't able to capitalize, but I think that play with Swift or, really any of our running backs, or even a variation maybe with like Khalif Raymond with a little bit more home run speed could be very effective in the future. Speaking of Khalif Raymond, 5 receptions, 45 yards. Amon-Ra had 4 receptions for 18 yards. Really, really didn't do anything that special. Didn't have a huge opportunity to do anything that special, right? Wasn't targeted all that often. And I mean, I think was targeted 6 times, had 4 receptions, just wasn't really put in a great situation, in my opinion. The fumble, of course, was the big, I'd say the big play of the first half. Right? If that fumble doesn't happen, you go into the locker room down 9-0 if you're the Detroit Lions. And I think 9-0 is drastically different than 16-0. I think that defensive touchdown by New England really, I would say, really deflated the team. I'd say that was the moment where it was like, okay, this is going to be a long day, right? Because even if your offense is struggling, if you go into a halftime down 9 points, down just, I mean, basically 1.5 possessions, right? A touchdown and a field goal, you are still very much in that game, but you give up that defensive touchdown. You have that 4th down and 9, which I do not understand. Down by 6, you run a play, you fumble the ball, it's returned for a defensive touchdown. I think that was the moment that truly deflated the team, and I think that was the true moment that that game was officially over. Um, it is it was very unfortunate to see the Lions offense. And quite honestly, I did not think that the Lions defense played all that poorly, right? Deshaun Elliott, 12 tackles, 3 tackles for loss and an interception, had a great day as a safety, despite not playing a majority of snaps for the team, right? I thought Aiden Hutchinson had a couple of pressures. Alex Anzalone, I thought, looked better in coverage. Malcolm Rodriguez was still good. Austin Bryant had a tackle for loss. I know we got to Mac Jones once with Austin Bryant, but it was called back for illegal hands to the face. It wasn't a top tier performance by any means, but I thought that the defense looked much better than they did against Geno Smith in Seattle. But quite honestly, I think that they got outplayed, right? I think that last week the defense was outcoached. I think Aaron Glenn didn't put his players in a situation to truly succeed. This week, I think Aaron Glenn did put his players in good positions. I just think that his players did not do him the favors that he was doing them, right? You had that 3rd down, and I believe it was 5 either early in the second or very late in the first, right? You had Bailey Zapp backed up into his own end zone, 3rd down, and you're running man coverage, and Will Harris simply got beat to the outside. It wasn't a scheme issue. It wasn't a zone issue. It wasn't good play call versus good play call versus good play call. It was simply Will Harris got beat to the outside, and the Lions got beat in man over and over and over again. And that's not something you can put on Aaron Glenn. I think Aaron Glenn called the right defenses at the right times. I think he put those players in a position to succeed. And quite frankly, I think a lot of the players did not do as well as they should have and as well as we want them to do. Now, Calvin Keys says Bailey Zapp is the real deal. Almost beat the pack too. I don't think Bailey Zapp is that bad of a quarterback. I think Bailey Zapp is pretty much exactly what he is in college, right? He's a game manager. He can deliver some throws. He's accurate. He is smart. He knows where to go with the football. He's not, a Patrick Mahomes or a Justin Herbert that's going to rule the NFL and is going to carry his team to 15 wins. But he's a good quarterback. He's accurate. He has enough arm strength to get it there. He's smart. He knows when to deliver the football. Very, very Tom Brady-esque. And obviously, he's not Tom Brady, but he kind of has that knack where it's like, okay, he's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, he's not the strongest. He's a very Patriots quarterback, right? In that same mold of Tom Brady, in the same mold of Mac Jones, right? You're not the biggest, you're not the fastest, you're not the strongest, you don't have the biggest arm, but you're smart, you know where to go with the football, you know the plays by heart, you read the defense very well, you make good decisions, and Bailey Zapp, went 17 of 21 for a reason. He had a very good day versus the Lions. And, like Dan Campbell said in his press conference, I think the defense got better. I think the defense played a better football game. And if the defense puts up that kind of performance typically, I think the Lions will win more football games. I think if they hold opposing offenses to 1 touchdown and 5 field goals, I think they will have an opportunity to win a lot of football games this year. But the defense has to be more consistent. The pass rush has to get home a little bit more. And the offense has to score a few points if the Lions are going to want to win football games. Now, Ramondre Stevenson had 25 carries for 161 yards. I did not think that the Lions the Lions rushing defense was that poor, despite the 2 massive plays, right? The 49-yard run in the second quarter, and I believe the other big run late in the fourth. I did not think that the Lions rushing defense was that bad outside of 2 plays. But of course, the 161 yards is not very good at the end of the day for the stat line. Jacoby Myers had a big day going against Bobby Price and Chase Lucas for a majority of it. I didn't think Jeff Okudah had his best day, right? 2 pass interference calls. One I thought was fair. One I thought was a little weird. I don't really understand how he impeded a wide receiver when he was being stiff-armed in the face and fell to the ground. But he didn't have his best day. I'd say it was probably his worst performance of the season. Hoping that a bye week will do him some good as well. Where do the Lions go from here? Tough matchup ahead versus Dallas. Yeah, it is a very, very tough matchup, but hopefully going into the bye, they have a little bit extra time to prepare. They have some time to get healthy. They have hopefully some of their players that are going to return, because the Detroit Lions had quite a few, I would say, injury-riddled problems this week. And they've had that for a little while. For the last couple of weeks, they've been without quite a few of their players. Right? It didn't help that Savion Smith left the field in an ambulance. It didn't help that, Okudah went down and Deshaun Elliott went down. And, if you could think of a secondary member, if Yatsu went down, 5 defensive backs left the field for the Lions yesterday and 1 return. It was pretty bad for the team. But outside of even those injuries that happened in game, right, you have, and as it loads here, you have a lot of injuries for this team. And this is just the injury report from this week. Quintez Cephas was out. DJ Chark, your supposed number 1 wide receiver on the boundary, missed a game. John Kaminsky, a player that, came in this offseason and really was I wouldn't say a dominant force, but was a very good, consistent pressure guy for the Detroit Lions, really pushed and collapsed the interior of those pockets versus the Eagles and the Commanders. He was a huge part of what the Lions were doing on defense this year. He got hurt in week 2, hasn't returned since, and the defense hasn't looked anywhere near as good as they did versus the Commanders. Charles Harris, a player that isn't playing all that well this season, but is still a guy you count on for, 4 to 5 sacks a season, 5 to 6 maybe, did not play. All right, so 2 of your best pass rushers didn't play. 1 of your best receivers didn't play. DeAndre Swift, your most dynamic weapon on offense, did not play. Chris Board, I honestly don't remember if he played or not. But if he did, he didn't make a big impact, and he's been injury riddled. Jonah Jackson's had his injury concerns. Josh Reynolds, St. Brown, Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, TJ Hawkinson. There are so many players injured on this team that you would expect to have back after the bye week, right? You have 2 weeks now to get healthy. You have 2 weeks to return Chark, to return Kaminsky, to return Harris, to return Swift, and St. Brown to get 100%, and for Decker and Jackson and Ragnow to return to 100% health. You have 2 weeks for Jerry Jacobs to return and add a little bit of help in the secondary, as he hasn't played yet this season. 2nd-round pick Josh Pascal is allegedly returning after the bye week as well. He should add a little bit of help to the interior pass rush. You have hopefully 1st-round pick Jameson Williams returning from the torn ACL that he suffered at Alabama after the bye, or very near after the bye week. There is help coming to the Detroit Lions, and I think that will help them win some games. But I also think there has to be some coaching changes, and not necessarily changes from the namesake, more so changes from the schematics and how the Lions are running their defense. And I want to see more of what we saw against New England defensively, right? You don't send as many pressures, but you do get a little bit of that pressure with four people rushing, right? Aiden Hutchinson, I think, had two pressures on the game, had the only two pressures on the game, but I thought he stepped up. And despite missing the sack on Bailey Zapp in the open field, I didn't think played the worst game, right? When you're the only real pass rushing threat, it's really easy to target Hutchinson and neutralize him, right? Whether it be a double team or a chip or just simply sliding protection that way, just in case Aiden Hutchinson beats the tackle. But I didn't think Aiden Hutchinson played that poor of a game yesterday. Like I said, John Kaminsky hopefully comes back and adds to the pass rush. Josh Pascal hopefully comes back and adds to the pass rush. Same thing with Charles Harris. Hopefully Romeo Okwara, who hasn't played this season with his torn Achilles from last year, can return relatively soon to the season. I just think they're very low on pass rushing depth right now. And I really believe that if they were able to get pressure with 4 or 5 man fronts, if they were able to line up, Hutchinson as the edge, and they were able to put, Demetrius Taylor and John Kaminsky on the inside, and then have, you know, Josh Pascal or, Charles Harris or even Romeo Okwara on the other side, that would get you pressure. But right now, you're playing, right? You're very, very depleted because as far as your edge rushers and as far as your true pass rushers go, you're missing probably 3 of your 5 or even 4 of your 5, right? Because Aleem McNeil, as good as he is a run stopper. Isaiah Buggs, as well as he's played, is a run stopper. Michael Brockers, for whatever he's bringing to the table, which isn't much right now, is not bringing pass rush. I don't know what he's bringing to the locker room, probably leadership and, some nice speeches, but he's not really bringing play on the field. So you look at your interior defensive line, your only real pass rushing threat until those guys return is undrafted rookie free agent Demetrius Taylor, who, granted, I thought for the limited snaps that he played could have looked worse. I thought he looked okay in limited snaps, but I really think I'd say 40% of it is getting healthy, getting Kaminsky, getting Harris, getting Pascal, getting Okwara back. In part of it, I'd say probably 30%, right? That would be less aggressive, right? Get home with your 4 guys. Maybe dial up some things that are a little bit more exotic that don't have to do with zero blitzing. And I would say, part of it, the rest of it would be offensively, right? You can't give and spot teams 7 points every single game like the Detroit Lions have been doing this year, right? In 3 of their 5 excuse me, in 3 of their 5 games, the opponent has scored a defensive touchdown. And in 2 of those games, that defensive touchdown potentially could have been the difference. So I think, coaching changes are a huge thing. I think being less aggressive, both offensively and defensively, trusting your kicker, taking the points when it makes sense, right? Last week, or I guess even yesterday, there was a 4th and 9 and you're down by 6, and Dan Campbell decides to go for it instead of trusting the kicker that went 4 for 4 last week. Decision-making is a huge part of this team's problem right now, and I would say injury and talent is the rest of it, right? Getting healthy would be great. Getting back your edge rushers would be phenomenal, but at the end of the day, coaching needs to help. And offensively, the coaching has been very good so far, despite, and with the exception, of course, of this New England game, but the coaching offensively has been very good this season. The coaching defensively has been hit or miss, and it's missed way more times than it has hit this season. So I think it is a combination of the two. I think they are 2 factors that play heavily off of each other, right? If you can get pressure with 4, you don't have to bring more. And if you can get pressure with, your front, then you can drop more players into coverage. More players in coverage means less space for the quarterback to work with. Less space for the quarterback to work with means that he has to hold on to the ball a little longer. That means the pass rush has a little bit more time to get home. It's, I think, 2 factors that heavily play off of each other. But until they get healthy, which, again, hopefully they will do over the bye week, I really think it's going to be hard for this Lions defense to get better. Now, offensively, I'm not really all that concerned, which might sound weird because the Lions just got shut out. They didn't score a point. And yes, that is concerning for the game, right? That's not something you want to see out of your young offensive coordinator in just his 5th game as an OC. But honestly, I'm really not concerned about the offense. I think the offense just needs to kind of stay the course, right? I think Ben Johnson's big thing over these next 2 weeks is he's got to sit down with Jared Goff and say, okay, that was a bad game, right? I got my butt kicked. You got your butt kicked. Penny got, beat. Taylor got beat. Amon-Ra got beat. Jamal got, right? We did not play our best game, but we're still the team that was on historic pace before last week. We're still the team that has the most points scored in the first month of the season ever in NFL history. And I think those are the things that he has to bring to Jared Goff. I think he has to reinstill that confidence, right? Come back against Dallas and say, okay, yes, New England was very good, right? New England had our number that day, but Dallas is a new opponent. Dallas has new weaknesses. Dallas doesn't have the greatest defensive-minded coach in NFL history calling for your number. And I think that's really what it was on Sunday. I think Bill Belichick is the greatest head coach to ever live. I think he is the greatest defensive-minded coach to ever call plays. And I think he had the number of Jared Goff. I think he took advantage of Jared Goff in the things he couldn't do. I think he took advantage of the inexperience of a young coordinator like Ben Johnson, who was on a roll. And, it happens. It happened to Sean McVay when they played when the Rams played the Patriots in Super Bowl 53. It happened to Sean McVay, right? It happened to Sean McVay again against the Bears in 2018 or 2019 when the Bears had their 12-5 run with Khalil Mack. It happens to the best offensive minds in football, right? It happened to Brian Dable last year versus Jacksonville. Sometimes the other team just has your number. Some days you're just not going to score very many points. And some days, right, it's going to have to be that low scoring defensive battle between the two teams. But I don't think it's reason to really panic when it comes to the offense, right? Because Bill Belichick at one point or another has out-schemed everybody in the NFL. He did it against Buffalo. He did it against Brian Dable, who's now a head coach, but was a great OC. He did it against Sean McVay in the Super Bowl. He did it against Patrick Mahomes in his MVP season, right? Shut them out in the first half of the AFC Championship game and was a huge reason why they went to the Super Bowl that year. Every single great offensive coordinator in the NFL has gotten out-schemed and out-coached by Bill Belichick at some point in the season, and it happened to Ben Johnson. I'm not concerned about Ben Johnson. I'm not really concerned all that much about the offense because, quite honestly, like I said, they've been the highest scoring offense in the NFL, and they've been the highest scoring team in NFL history before week 5. I really don't think there is that much to be worried about on the offensive side of the ball. And, you have weapons coming in. Hopefully Quintez Cephas returns. Hopefully DJ Chark can return after being limited on and off in practice throughout the week. Hopefully DeAndre Swift can come back and make a big impact like he did the first 2 games versus Washington and Philadelphia. He is a player that wanted to play the last 2 games, and the coaching staff kind of sat him down and said, no, we're not going to have you fight through these injuries, right? We're not going to have them get worse. We're not going to make your ankle worse. We're not going to put strain on your shoulder when you're not ready for it. So, we talk about all the players returning to defense, but you have DeAndre Swift, your best offensive weapon, returning. You have DJ Chark, a great wide receiver who has chemistry with Goff, returning. You have, Jonah Jackson, who returned last week and is now going to have 2 consecutive weeks of practice to get back into NFL speed and get those NFL reps back in again, right? Hopefully, you have guys like James Mitchell, your tight end that you just drafted, coming in to be a little bit more of a weapon in the red zone. Hopefully, Jameson Williams can potentially return and add an even bigger play threat on this already great offense. So, honestly, I'm not – to answer the question, I guess, a little bit quicker because that was very drawn out. Defensively, get healthy, and go from there. Offensively, stay the course. The offense is good. The defense has some problems, but I think they're working on the ways to figure it out. And I really think that if the Lions stay the course, right? And I know everybody's freaking out. I know there's been a lot of people saying, oh my God, fire Dan Campbell, fire Aaron Glenn, get rid of this guy, get rid of that guy. Now after this game, after, weeks and weeks of people telling me Jared Goff is the future quarterback of the franchise, right? And that I was stupid to even be looking and scouting quarterbacks, right? Now they're telling me, okay, CJ Stroud, number 1 pick in the draft, we're getting a new quarterback next year. People need to relax. I think that the media, I think that the fans are very much overreacting to this game. And trust me, I get it. I don't like losing 29-0. I think that this was the worst game of the Campbell era so far. I think, like Coach Campbell said, the Lions have definitely hit rock bottom. Nobody wants to be 1-4. He didn't expect the Lions to be 1-4. I did, personally, right? I was pretty high on the Lions this offseason, but if you go back to my preseason predictions, I had the Lions starting 1-4 with their only win being over the Washington Commanders. As of right now, just quick side note, I am 100% on my prediction so far for the Detroit Lions. And if we go to that, which we're going to go, it's a little ways back, so we're going to have to scroll for a few minutes. But I had the Lions starting 1-4 because I thought this early stretch would not be good for the Detroit Lions. I really, really did not. So if we pull it up over here, right, we go to the record prediction that we, I put together before the season even began, right? Way too early record prediction. This was about 2 months before the season, right before training camp kicked off, right? I said the Lions would lose a close one to the Eagles because I thought the Eagles were more talented than the Detroit Lions, but I thought it would be close because I think the Lions are a complete team with very few holes right now. And, I was wrong about there being very few holes, but they were a competitive team in this game. I said that they would pretty easily take out the Washington Commanders, which they did. I thought they'd lose a close one on the road to Minnesota, which they did. I thought they would lose to Seattle because I wasn't buying into the whole Geno Smith sucks thing, right? He had some talent for a reason. The Seahawks have faith in him for a reason. And with weapons like DK Metcalf, with weapons such as Tyler Lockett and Kenneth Walker and Rashad Penny and Noah Fant with a young offensive line, I didn't think the Seahawks were going to be that bad. I had them losing that game. I had them losing to the Patriots because I had a feeling this young coaching staff and this young team could very well be outcoached by the greatest coach of all time and that coaching staff, right? I have them going into the bye at 1-4. I actually have them coming out of the bye at 1-5. I think Dallas is a very good football team. As of right now, they're hot. They're on a roll. And I did not think the Lions matched up very well versus the Dallas Cowboys, right? I think that the Lions secondary leaves a lot to be desired. And when you're asking them to cover guys like CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup for 4 to 5 seconds, I think it's going to be really hard for a team like Detroit to go and upset the Cowboys in Dallas. Now, I had them coming home and beating and upsetting the Miami Dolphins, who, if injuries continue to rise, could very well come true. And then, of course, I had the rest of this out here, and we'll see as the season goes on if I remain perfect on the season and if I just, happen to be really good at what I talk about, or, if the Lions can turn something around. But the point of that, and I guess I'll pull it back up one more time because I think it is something to maybe take a look at, right? End of the season, I have the Lions finishing 8-9 because I think this team is a good football team. I think that they have some good talent, but I kind of knew going into the season they wouldn't be healthy, right? We knew going in that the defense wasn't going to be great. We knew going in that Josh Pascal and Romeo Okwara and Levi Onwuzurike and, player X, Y, and Z wouldn't really be available. Jamison Williams and the tight end from Virginia Tech, James Mitchell. We knew that these guys weren't going to come back. And I figured, right, Eagles are good, the Vikings are good, the Patriots are good. I thought best case scenario, the Lions go into the bye 2-3. Most likely scenario, the Lions go into the bye 1-4. Now, I think that they get those players back. I think if you go through the injury report, Jerry comes back, and Josh Pascal comes back, and Kaminsky comes back soon, and Charles Harris returns on the defense, and hopefully well, Tracy Walker's out for the season, but they are going to get some talent back, but it's going to take a little time. And they're going to go play a very good Dallas team on the road, but they come back at home after that, right? They're finally healthy. And I mean, fully, nearly 100% healthy at this point, and they upset a very good Miami team. They take advantage of a Bears team that I think has been scrappy all season, but is not nearly as talented on paper as the Detroit Lions are right now. I think that they can take advantage of the Giants and maybe steal a win there. Right? And so on and so forth. And again, kind of like Coach Campbell had been preaching, it takes that first win to get to 2, and it takes 2 wins to get to 3, and it's hard to break that losing streak. But once you break it, and especially if it's a break like a big win at home versus the Miami Dolphins of all teams, that momentum can carry you, right? That momentum can keep you afloat in the season, and that's when you start to build that confidence, and that's when you can rattle off 2, 3, 4 wins, and that's when you can get hot at the end of the season and maybe not make the playoffs. I was never under the impression that the Detroit Lions were a playoff caliber football team this season, but a competitive football team is something that I thought they would be. And for the large majority of the season, that's what they have been. For a large majority of the season, they have been a good football team. And a good football team, a competitive football team, right? 3-point loss to the only undefeated team left in the NFL. Big win, 9-point victory versus a team that they should have beat, right? 4-point loss to a division rival on the road after leading that game for most of it. 3-point loss to a team with quite a few very good weapons, right? 3-point loss in the highest scoring game of the year. This is the first loss where it feels like this was the worst case scenario, right? It seems like, on the other ones, like, oh, we're close, a few things here, a few things there, no pick six against Philly. That's a victory, right? Oh, kick some field goals a little bit more reliably in Minnesota. You get that win, right? Oh, don't throw the pick six against the Seahawks. Oh, that's a victory. That's a 7-point swing right there. This is the first win where going into the week, I thought the Lions were the better football team. And coming out of it, I have less faith and I have a lower opinion on the Detroit Lions than I had on Saturday. Because the Lions, for what it's worth, I thought were better than what they showed, right? 29-0 is bad. 29-0 is horrible. But like I said, I thought they were too aggressive on 4th down. Should have kicked your field goals when you had the chance. If you kick your field goals instead of going 0-6 on 4th down, the Detroit Lions lose this game 29-15, assuming the Money Badger hits all of his kicks. 29-15 looks better than 29-0. And I think if the Lions had lost this game 29-15, there would be less people upset than there are right now. Right? I think there would be less people calling for Campbell's job. I think there would be less people that have lost faith in the Detroit Lions. I think there would be less backlash from the media if it was a 2-score game instead of a 30-point loss. Right? But it wasn't. The Lions were aggressive. The Lions stayed with their tendencies, and it bit them in the butt. But as of right now, I just still don't think the Lions are that bad of a football team, right? And this, fully admitted, could be a biased opinion. This could be this could be a biased opinion. This could be something that may not necessarily be true. And I think this is a subjective thing to say. But if you're looking at the rest of the teams in the NFL, and I'm not saying the Lions are the best team by any means. I'm truly, truly not saying that they're the best team in the NFL. But I think they're better than Carolina. I think they're better than Pittsburgh. I think they're better than Washington. I think that they're better than Houston. Honestly, I think they're right on par with Seattle. I think they're right on par with, maybe not the better teams in the NFL, but there are teams in the NFL worse than the Detroit Lions right now. And, the record is 1-4, and everything looks really bad right now. But I really don't think the season is as over or as in jeopardy as people think. And to be quite honest, I don't think the season was all that much to play for anyway this year. This was not a season the Lions were supposed to be good. This was not a season the Lions were supposed to make the playoffs. This was a season for improvement. This was a season to get better. This was a season for the Detroit Lions to take a step forward and improve as a team. And like it or not, a 1-4 start going into the bye with a lot of highlights on offense is much better than they were a season ago. This team a season ago had far, far more problems than they did this season, right? You go into last season, you look at the first 5 games, they couldn't score. They couldn't stop people. They had pretty much every defensive problem they had this year. And then they had every offensive problem you could imagine. Let's even go, right? Detroit Lions 2021 schedule, right? Because I know for a fact that, we go to the San Francisco game, right? The offense didn't really come alive until very late in that football game. Did not come alive at all until the very end. They gave up 41 points. Right? You go and you give up 35 the next week and you couldn't score very many points. You got shut out in the first quarter, in the first half by Baltimore. And yeah, your defense played well, but that's because Marquise Brown dropped 3 touchdowns in the end zone. The Bears put 24 on you in a pretty bad showing by the Lions defense. The Bengals put up 34 while you scored 11. The Eagles scored 44 while you put up 6. The Lions couldn't stop anybody. The Lions defense had, let's see, I'd say 1, 2, 3. I wouldn't even say their performance against Pittsburgh was good. I would say 3 against the Browns. I would say 4 against the Cardinals. They had 4 good games out of 17 a year ago, the defense did. The offense had less. The offense had less good games. But the defense had 4 really good showings, maybe 5 if you want to count Atlanta. They had 5 of their 17 games. They looked good. They looked like games where the Lions could have won because of the defense. The Lions don't have any of those games this season, but we're only 5 games in, right? The team is better this year. The team has taken a step forward. And you can't fix everything in one draft. You can't, sit here and be like, oh, I can't believe we still stink. We started the season 0-10 a season ago. 0-10. And this year, right, not to make excuses, but you play the number 1 team in the NFC to open. You play the number 1 team in the North to open your division schedule. You play the greatest coach of all time. So realistically, going into the season, you should have expected those 3 losses. Now, I think the way we lost to New England is reason for disappointment. I think the reason and the way we lost to Seattle and Minnesota is reason for concern. But if you weren't concerned last year, right, because the Lions performed much worse last year. The Lions were a much worse football team in 2021 than they are in 2022. You can see it on the field. You can see it in the stat sheet. You can see it in, caliber of opponent. They are not playing as poorly as they were last year. They are playing at a much higher level than they did a season ago. The team has taken a step forward, and you saw that against Washington. When all the pieces are there, the team works. When Kaminsky, excuse me, 1 second. When Kaminsky is in the game and when the pass rush is starting to get home, when the interior gets that pressure, the Lions defense works. And we saw exactly how the Lions want to attack their opponents. We saw exactly how Aaron Glenn wants to run his defense. And when the Lions had a consistent pass rush, when their safety duo was playing good and communicating well, when their corners started playing at a decent level. Their corners didn't play great against Washington, but they played well enough, right? They didn't get beat deep down the field too many times. They kept stuff in front of them. When the pass rush was there, when the Lions defense was healthy, they were a good football team. And yeah, they still gave up 27. Sure, there's still reason to improve. There's still, room for improvement there. But we saw how the Lions want to play. We saw what the Lions want to be, and we saw that it can work. Right? After Washington, right, Kaminsky got hurt. Every interior pass rusher that we have is officially out with injury, and the Lions couldn't get a lot of pass rush versus Minnesota. Still led that game, right? Went, I believe, 5 for 6 on fourth downs and, led that game in majority of the day. Still lost, still a heartbreaker, but, improvement, I would say. And then Seattle, you're without 3 of your top 5 weapons, 4 of your top 5 weapons, and you go in there and Jared Goff throws for 270. Jared Goff throws for 378, 4 touchdowns. All right, Williams, your backup running back, runs for 108 and 2 touchdowns, including a 51-yard run. The offense looked good. And there was reason for hope again, right? You fix the defense, you get back onto it, you go win some more football games. I don't think the Lions are as bad as this game would indicate. And I don't think they're as bad as their record would indicate, because for all of the problems on this team, and there are problems, right? I think that the offense has been very good, but I think that they have struggled in certain areas at times. And of course, the problems on the defense, which range from everything to anything. There are problems on this team, but there are less problems on this team than there were a season ago. So with that being said, I will wait till the end of the season. Whether the Lions make a trade, whether they figure it out, whether they change defensively, whether they change formations, or people just start playing better. I think that the Lions are still on pace for where they should be. I think the Lions are still on track for what we realistically should expect from this team. This team went 3-13-1 a season ago. One of their ties was to a backup quarterback. They had, honestly, two of their 3 wins, I would say, were impressive. One of their wins, which was against Minnesota, I'd say was an average victory, right? It's a team that fought hard, earned a victory for sure, but I wouldn't say was a super quality opponent. They're a team that won 3 games. They're a team that had numerous holes last season. So, yes, the Lions are in trouble. Yes, the Lions have not played very well, especially defensively, but in general, the Lions have not played their best football over the last 2 weeks, especially defensively and last week offensively, right? They are 0-3 in their last 3. But I think all the people jumping ship, I think all the people advocating for the Lions to fire Dan Campbell and fire Aaron Glenn and trade away this player and that player and restart need to calm down. Because the Lions are 1 year and 5 games, 1.3 years essentially, into their rebuild, into their long-term rebuild. A rebuild that started with trading away a franchise quarterback, trading away assets, drafting very highly, having a bare bones roster to start their tenure and to start their regime. And in a year and a half, the Lions have a top tier offense. They have a great young-minded offensive coordinator. And they have improved dramatically from where they were when the roster first began under Dan Campbell. Now, I'm not saying it's good enough. I'm not making excuses. I'm not, sitting here and saying, "Oh, the Lions are a good football team getting unlucky." No, they have mistakes. They've made mistakes. They've earned every single one of those losses that they have, and there is no excuse for any of them. But there's reasons for them. And those reasons come down to coaching, which I think can get better. I think they have the right people in the building to get better. They come down to players not playing better, players not developing quite as fast, which again takes time to develop. And it comes down to it takes time. It takes time. Brad Holmes has had 15 draft selections. He has found 6 starters. And then he also found Ifeatu Melifonwu, who started, found Derek Barnes, who has started football games, who I don't consider full-time starters. So if you want to talk about draft picks by Brad Holmes that have started games for the Lions, you have Penei Sewell, you have Aleem McNeil, you have Ifeatu Melifonwu, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you have Derek Barnes, you have Aiden Hutchinson, and Malcolm Rodriguez. And Josh Pascal will make starts when he's healthy and ready. And Kirby Joseph. That's 8 starters and 15 draft picks. Now, you can say he hasn't done well in free agency. That's fair. You can say he missed with Levi. Could have had JOK. Could have. But it takes time. And if the Lions show improvement, if the Lions finish with 7 wins, 8 wins this season, which I think is still very possible, and they go into this offseason and they have a good draft defensively, they get 2 or 3 quality starters. I'm talking veteran starters, good players, Deron Payne level, Quinnen Williams level talent in the fridge. They get 2 or 3 of those guys, maybe one in the secondary, one in the trenches. I think that they should have high expectations going into next year because they, for what they've been able to do, have improved drastically. Now, One Pride 40, one of the longtime supporters of this channel, has found the stream. Says, "Oh boy, that was embarrassing." That certainly was embarrassing. That was not a good look for the Detroit Lions. Like I said earlier, Ben Johnson just kind of got out coached. He had his Sean McVay Super Bowl 53 moment of, oh bleep, like Bill Belichick is the greatest coach for a reason. But yeah, that was a very, very embarrassing loss. That defense should be better than this. I do not disagree. I think that the defense should be better. I think the defense should be holding their opponents to less points. And like I said, I think what a lot of people aren't seeing or aren't realizing or aren't taking into account is the loss of John Kaminsky. Because I really think he was the focal point of this defense, right? Aiden Hutchinson was the flash. Charles Harris was the new contract. Aiden Hutchinson was the number 2 overall pick. Aleem McNeil was the all-rookie. Michael Brockers is the veteran. John Kaminsky's a nobody, to be quite honest, but he was so productive. He was so efficient on the interior for the Detroit Lions. He was forcing pressure. He was collapsing pockets. He was phenomenal for the role that he was in. And I do think losing John Kaminsky is the biggest loss the Lions have sustained this season. And I really hope getting him and Pascal back will help this defense get better. Might be looking at Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. I'm not even going to speculate specifically, who the Lions could be looking at, who the Lions could draft, because it's week 5. They might, potentially end up with 2 top 10 picks at this point. Or, the Rams could rally and make the playoffs and the Lions could rally to 7 and 10. Right? They could have a range of 2 top 10 picks to 2 picks outside the top 10, maybe even outside the top 12. So I'm not gonna look at this and say, oh, the Lions should draft Will Anderson. Oh, the Lions should draft Jalen Carter or Miles Murphy or XYZ player. But I do think the defense should be better. And I think at this point, it's hard to say the Lions should not be looking to add defensively, whether it be midseason by the trade deadline for, right player, right price. Because, even though the Lions aren't necessarily in a position to win playoff games right now and to go to the playoffs right now, I think if The Jets are shopping Quinnen Williams, which has been rumored because of his frustration with the Jets so far. I think that player has a price because he's young with a lot of upside and is proven to play well in the NFL. If the Panthers, if rumors are true, and they're maybe looking to offload a player with a big contract coming up like Brian Burns, or maybe offload a guy like Jeremy Chin or Derek Brown for the new coaching staff to just kind of accumulate all these draft picks, you know, those are players, right? Young players with some high upside that have had production in the NFL. Those are guys I think you can still go out and buy if you're Brad Holmes. Now, by no means am I advocating, go trade away every asset you have to try to win right now. But if Brian Burns is available, make the call. At least see what they're offering, right? If Quinnen Williams or Derek Brown is available, go look. They're cheap talent who's on a rookie contract still, which fits the mantra of the Detroit Lions, but they're guys that have played well and succeeded in the NFL. So I think that there is a price for every player. And honestly, I think the Lions should at least be in touch with teams that are maybe looking to sell. I can't even watch that game. I was working. I got the game recorded. I don't even want to watch it. I would not watch it. I see no reason to watch it. It was bad, and I'll tell you what you're going to see. You're going to see Jared Goff making a couple poor decisions. You're going to see Matthew Judon having a very good day against our tackles. You are going to see bad defensive play. And that's about it. They should go back to a 3-4. They should go to whatever formation is going to get them some best results, because right now what they're doing is not working. Man, they could have had Deion. Yeah, but Deion Jones is very expensive. And he's not really that young, I don't believe. We can go to over the cap. I'm not entirely sure. Right? I could be wrong, because I had the same thought too. I had the same thought of, we could have had a very good linebacker, but Deion Jones hasn't played. How do you spell it? Is it Deion Jones? Dieon. He is 28, which isn't old, but I'd say is maybe a little older than the Lions want right now. But this year in 2022, he's costing $13 million. And next year, he's costing 20. I personally would not want to spend that money. It's not so much the draft pick, right? Because if you give up a 6th round pick or even a 5th round pick for a guy like Deion Jones and he returns to play like he was in 2019, you're getting a good player. That's not the problem. The problem is you only have $20 million of cap space. Why? And you just found a good gem at linebacker. Why would you spend $20 million, $13 to $20 million of cap space over the next 2 years each for I would say, above average linebacker who is aging, has injury issues, and hasn't played in 2 years or hasn't played in a year plus? Because we'll fact check. I'm not entirely sure what Deion Jones has done over the last 2 years, because I haven't really heard his name a whole lot. In 2021, he did play in 16 games, had 136. So he's played well. My mistake. I hadn't heard much from Deion Jones recently. I assumed he hadn't played. In 2022, he hasn't played at all. So I was correct on that. I personally would not have given up anything for Jones. I'll gladly take Brian Burns. Yeah, I would too for the right price. Addison Marinelli, I love your channel. Number 1 fan. I appreciate your support. I really, really do. It means a lot. Brian Burns is a speed rusher. Yeah, Brian Burns is a very different player to what the Detroit Lions have. And I think they need something different. I think that they need Aiden Hutchinson's more of a power rusher. Charles Harris is more of a power rusher. Romeo is more of a power rusher. Their only real speed threat as of right now is Julian Okwara, who is not as good as Brian Burns, quite simply. And Brian Burns is going to cost a lot of money. Brian Burns is going to cost a pretty penny. But for an elite edge rusher that is young and talented and has a lot of years left, that's the kind of player I would want the Lions to bring in, right? Not these, at this point, right, the 1 year prove it deals, former busts that could potentially come in and make a name for themselves and go off and make some more money, right? That's good for the first 2 years of a rebuild. And the guys that aren't going to be there long term, not the time to spend big money for long term. This is when you spend big money. This is when, you can pay for a quality edge rusher, right? And we're not talking 1 year deal. We're not talking a veteran on the last leg. We're talking a young, productive pass rusher who, some people consider a top 10 edge rusher in the NFL right now. You can pay that guy. That's the kind of guy you want to pay at this point in the rebuild because he's long-term, he's effective, he's proven, he is the perfect player right now for the Detroit. And not necessarily like from a scheme perspective, but like that caliber of player, that type of player is exactly what the Detroit Lions are missing. Yes, that is the lady. She is amazing. He would be into Hutchie's Yang. Yeah, he'd be very good. He'd be phenomenal. Hutchinson is a power rusher and Burns is a finesse rusher. Yeah, absolutely. They are two very different rushers. They're two very different styles of rushers. But you move them back and forth across the line, right? If Hutchinson starts on the left, that left tackle is really good against power. Is kind of a bigger, bulkier guy. You put Brian Burns over there, and you have him rush with that speed, have him get around the edge, have him hit him with a counter move, right? You play off different strengths. Whereas right now, it's you have two power rushers. If they can anchor against a power rusher, you're set for the day. Like they don't have a huge counter for those bigger tackles, those stronger tackles, right? Because Aiden Hutchinson, as good as I think he is and as productive as he has been for, considering the rookies this year, they don't have a counterpunch to Aiden Hutchinson, right? Aiden Hutchinson on the Detroit Lions and the Lions pass rush right now it's a one-trick pony. It's okay, we have power. We have, power and power and power. We have Hutchinson, we have Harris, we have the Romeo Okwara, and Josh Pascal when he comes back is another power guy. You need some speed. You need a little bit of that changeup. You need something that if that tackle is very good against power, they're probably not the quickest on their feet. So I think it is something to, consider going into this season. Probably, I would very highly doubt that they cut Big V and Romeo Okwara. Michael Brockers, I would expect. I would say Michael Brockers probably will get cut. I would genuinely be surprised if Big V gets cut because he was really good when he's playing, and if he returns, I would expect him to still be very, very good. But I would be genuinely surprised if the Lions were to cut Okwara or Big V because I think that they are two good players that will help the Lions win. And I think as of right now, even though, Big V is expensive, I think he's at least worth his money. I think he's at least worth the money he's being paid. And I can't complain about that, right? If we're getting paid like Michael Brockers and you're not contributing a whole lot, then I could be like, okay, cut him. But at this point, he's playing well. He's a good football player for the Detroit Lions. And, you look at it, you say, okay, Jared Goff is costing you $31 million. That is I'd say pretty heavy hindrance for a guy that is not a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And he's been great. He's been very, very good all season. And I don't think that this week changed anything about Jared Goff, but he's not a top 10 quarterback, right? Taylor Decker, your franchise tackle, is at $9 million. Jeff Okudah, rookie contract at $9 million. Frank Ragnow, rookie contract, $9 million. And they're paying a lot of dead money. They're paying a lot of dead money this season, but next year they have no dead money at all, right? Romeo Okwara's contract comes in, Taylor Decker's goes up. Big V is up there for sure. Ragnar's up there. Michael Brockers is up there. You can get rid of Michael Brockers and free up, let's see, $10 million. That's some nice change you can play with. Let's see. You have a guy like DJ Chark who's going to be off the books. You have, there's things you can do, right? I wouldn't recommend getting rid of Jared Goff, but if that's the move you want to make, you can free up $20 million. If you get the right guy and you feel like you can move forward without him, I'm not saying that's what I would do, but you could, right? Romeo, technically, you'd free up $7.5 million. So between him and Michael Brockers, that's 17. I wouldn't cut Big V. I think Big V, for the price that he is, he is expensive, but he's at least playing well, right? Unlike Michael Brockers, he's at least playing good football. I would drink Kool-Aid heavy if it burns. Yeah, I would too. Follow the money. Yeah, but who are you going to get that's better at these positions for cheaper? Because that's another thing to consider, right? You can't just go out there and magically find the answer, right? You got to go out there with people that are available. So if you're cutting Romeo Okwara, who's your replacement as of right now? If you're cutting Big V, who's your replacement at guard that's better and cheaper than what you're getting right now? Who's a better value at guard right now than Big V? Who's a better value right now than Michael Brockers? The answer is pretty much everybody, but still, it's the same question you still have to ask, right? Who's a better value than Charles Harris? Who's a better value than, whatever player you're looking to replace? And I'm not we're about 24 million right now. I'd say, cut Brockers, that gets you to 34. 34, you can do a bit with 34 million, right? Especially if you're pushing some cap spaces back. But we only have 2 million as of right now, so there's not a whole lot to work with, even if you wanted to bring somebody in. But the Lions are in a situation for sure. But, kind of going back to the heart of this, we're not really focused on next year, even though we've kind of gotten off on the tangent. Looking at the team, I think the Lions can win some games this year. I still do. I still think the Lions can be a 7 to 8 win team with minimal adjustments, right? Big adjustment is getting healthy. Big adjustment is just trusting in your players and your players stepping up to big moments. Now, looking forward to the rest of the season. The Lions go in to play Dallas. Dallas is 4-1. Dallas looks really good, so we can't really make a trade. We could. I mean, there's always opportunity to restructure contracts, to move people around, to do whatever, right? I'm not sure what Carolina, and cap space is whatever. I think the Saints might still be over the cap. Right, but you're looking here. Derek Brown is 6. That would probably, that would put us over, but not by too much. You're looking at Brian Burns is 4 million. As of this year, of course, like next year's a whole different story. That would put you over by 2, right? You can restructure some contracts, push some stuff back. You're looking at, another guy that they mentioned was J.C. Horn. He's at 4. Jeremy Chin is probably somewhere, I would assume. Did I miss him? Robbie, Christian, Taylor, Cameron, Derek, DJ, Dante, Ecom, Baker, Jalen, Brian, Pat, Xavier, Bradley, Course, CJ Henderson, Yeturgros Matos, maybe. Laviska Terrence is their safety getting paid? Oh, Jeremy Chin. 1.4 $1.4 million for Jeremy Chin. Good shout out, 1 Private 40. I didn't realize he was placed on IR. I was like, is he even getting paid to play for the Panthers? Because if not, that's not good. So, as of this year, it wouldn't be too bad. It wouldn't be, some cap nightmare for them to adjust to. They can move some numbers around and do it. Cap space, more of a myth than anything else, but that's just how the cap works in the NFL. So yes, if they really, really wanted to, they could make a trade for somebody like Brian Burns. And they could potentially go make a splashy move. But moving forward, I'm going to assume they don't, because it doesn't seem like that's the thing Brad Holmes is prone to do. It doesn't seem like his cup of tea to go make a big splashy move like that. Now, we saw it last year in the draft. He made a big trade up. So anything is possible. I think Brad Holmes is willing to be aggressive if the right guy's out there, but I wouldn't expect it because I think the odds of it happening are pretty thin. But, you look at this team and you say, okay, you have a bye week. You're getting healthy. Let's assume everybody returns from the bye except for Jameson Williams and Romeo Okwara and let's just say who else maybe might not return. I would say those are the big two. I'd say Romeo Okwara, Jameson Williams aren't back, but Kaminsky's playing and Pascal is playing and Jacobs is playing and all the other injured players right now are back to being fairly healthy. Right? Do I think they can beat Dallas? At Dallas, I think they are going to be very competitive. Do I think they can beat Miami at home if Miami sustains and keeps up with their injuries? Yeah. At this point, do I think Green Bay is a juggernaut of an offense and a juggernaut of a team that can't be beat? No. They almost lost to Bailey Zapp and the Patriots last week. Do I think that Chicago, despite having, 2 wins on the season already, do I think they are some otherworldly team that should beat the Detroit Lions? I do not. I think the Lions should still win that game versus the Chicago Bears. Again, the Giants are 4-1. They've won a lot of very close, very tight games. I think the Lions should still be able to at least compete with the Giants. Buffalo's a tough one, but if you're talking about a shootout, I don't know if there's a lot of teams I would want in a shootout right now other than the Detroit Lions if you're taking on the Buffalo Bills. You're talking about Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's been hot and cold, but I think they should be a winnable game. Not a gimme, but a winnable game. We know Minnesota's a winnable football game. We think the Jets could be. Carolina, I think, is a winnable football game. Chicago's a winnable football game. And again, Green Bay at Lambeau, Green Bay doesn't look unstoppable. Green Bay looks very, very, very beatable right now. He comes from a franchise that just throws picks away like it's candy. Yeah. And, I truly, truly think the Lions can win games this season. I really do think that the Lions, despite their 1-4 start, despite the problems that they have, right? Problems that I truly do think are fixable. I think you're still looking at a 7-win team. I think you're still looking at a team that, in the second half of the season, when Jameson comes back, can beat Miami, can beat Chicago, can beat Green Bay, can beat New York, can beat Jacksonville, can beat Minnesota and New York, in Carolina, in Chicago, in Green Bay again, because quite honestly, they are a team that can win football games. They're a team that can put up points. And with, I think, like I said, these fixes we talked about earlier in the stream, the defense can at least start looking average. And all we need is an average defense right now to truly take another big step forward as the Detroit Lions franchise. But I think Burns would help Hutchinson massively. I think he would too. I think Burns would be a huge help for Hutchinson. I think any elite pass rusher, whether it be Burns, whether it be an interior guy, would be a great help for Hutchinson. Any help for Aiden, I think, would make Aiden a better football player, quite honestly, whether it be through the draft, whether it be through free agency, whether it be through a trade. Any single amount of help that the Lions can give Hutchinson will make Hutchinson a better player, because right now teams are focused on one defensive player on the Lions. That's number 97. But this defense continues this trend. Pleasant about to come in. And, maybe that's a step the Lions have to take. Maybe the Lions have to take a look at Aubrey Pleasant, and maybe he's this year's Ben Johnson, right? Maybe he's that guy that steps up late in the season, says, "Hey, Aaron, we're gonna start letting this dude come up with some options, right? You're still gonna call the plays, you're still gonna be, the guy, you're still gonna be that big coach, but we're gonna have him come assist you, and we're gonna see, what does Aubrey Pleasant have to say? What can't, Aubrey Pleasant was interviewed for the Minnesota DC job last year. So yeah, I think that there is definitely some options out there. I think the Lions after this game can still win quite a few games this season. But with that being said, I think that is all we have time for today. My voice is starting to give out 2 live streams in 3 days is not very kind on the vocal cords. So with that being said, that is all we have for you guys today. Again, if you have just gotten here, if you're watching the stream afterwards, please leave in your comments down below what you think about the Lions team. How do you feel this team is as of right now? Where do you think this team can go? What do you think the fixes are for this team going into the bye? And what do you want to see out of the Lions after they come out of the bye? Nolan just joined the stream, and we are about to end it here really, really soon. Do we make any signings? I would be very, very shocked if the Lions do anything at the trade deadline, because I just don't think it's in their nature right now. But like I said, with that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all for coming in. Thank you all for talking football for an hour and 15-ish with me. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream as well. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.